It gets worse before it gets better.
Our first one, from the first minute, was a wild man. We never slept. Now we just sleep with this one. So.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, I will call this August 7th, 2024 Town Council Work Session to order. Welcome everyone in attendance and those who are tuned in online as well. At this time, I'll ask for a roll call. Ms. McKay.
Mrs. Amos,
Here.
Mr. Reed,
Here.
Mr. Dwyer,
Here.
Mr. Parrott,
Here.
Mr. Yolen,
Here.
Mr. Hunter,
Here.
Mr. Hardy.
Here.
Thank you. Next up is adoption of the agenda. Do I hear a motion to adopt the agenda as presented? I will note that we originally had land bank ordinance on here, but that has been stricken from the agenda. Do I hear a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Next up is declaration of personal interest. Do we have anyone who wishes to declare a declaration of personal interest concerning anything on the agenda at this time? Not hearing any, we will move to the finance report with our finance director, Ms. Julie Moore.
Good evening. You have the June finance reports in front of you, and this is the 12th month of fiscal year 24. So if you look at the revenue to the budget, we should be at 100%, but as you can tell, we're slightly down, but we've talked about this in the past. There are things in our budget that are not true revenue, and there's some revenue items that we've not recognized yet. Like I still haven't just today booked the ARPA money that we should recognize. So if you look, when we get the audit done at the budget to actual there, you'll see like the true revenue to budget, which will all look great. If you look at revenue compared to prior year, we're higher than last year at this time, except for in the airport fund, and we've talked about that. That's because, you know, in the prior year, we had a big project that we don't have this past year. The expenses of budget were down. I mean, we're not at 100%, so that's positive. The only fund that was above the budget is the street maintenance fund, and that was due to paving. And we'll come to you next month, and when we ask for some things to get rolled over to the new budget year because it was committed but hasn't been paid for yet because we haven't gotten it, and we'll have to move some money around. And so we have some carryover funds from in the past that I didn't budget last year, so we'll be coming asking you to let me add that to the budget so we won't be over in the street maintenance fund. When you look at expenses to prior year, we're above prior year, but that's simply because we had some bigger purchases this past year, like the splash pad and the finance software and things like that. Any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Moore at this time?
Okay, I also need to point out that next week I'm bringing a resolution to you. In the budget for fiscal year 25, there was some items that we were going to do a lease purchase like we've done the last couple of years for some vehicles and equipment. And so VML put that out to bid for us, and US Bank won that proposal. They had the best rate, and it was 4.52, which doesn't sound great as the last 2 years, but it's still better. It's lower than what we're earning. When I looked at LGIP this morning, we're still earning like 5.4, so we're still making money on the money that we're holding. And we're gonna do 3 years instead of 5 years on this loan because it saves us a lot of interest if we go that route. So, any questions on that?
Do you think that in the next several months, the percentage rate will drop even lower than that?
For LGIP,
Yes.
no. Originally I thought it was, but now that the economy isn't looking that great, I don't think the feds are gonna drop the rates.
Thank you.
So,
Any additional questions at this time? Not hearing any. Thank you, Ms. Moore. Next up on the agenda is an update on the wastewater plant upgrade. Mr. Davis?
Mayor and council members, in some of my reports that I've been giving you, saying that we are looking at water and wastewater treatment plant. If you remember, for the wastewater treatment plant, we're trying to go away from chlorine gas to a liquid for it to be safer. And as we've been going through this with TRC, which used to be Draper Aden, the engineer has asked us, as we're looking at the conversion, of why we're even looking at chlorine in general, in that over half of the plants probably in Virginia have done away with chlorine and gone to UV lights. And so Julie has been tasked with taking on this project and working with Mr. Caldwell and Ken at the wastewater treatment plant. So I'm going to let her explain. I've been involved through the whole process, but I've given her this project to work on, and so she's going to explain what that would entail and how that would benefit us long term.
okay, I'm really excited about this, okay? So the basics of it is, instead of using chemicals, the lights shine on the water and it changes the DNA and it basically kills all of the germs and viruses or anything that could be in the water. So when it goes back into the river, there's no chemicals in it. So that's a positive. And plus it's safer for the employees and the citizens because you don't have to worry about any chlorine leaks. Another thing, if we stay down the path of the liquid, there's a potential. One of the things that we're finding harder and harder is to find the chemicals that we would need. Not only finding suppliers that have them, but the costs are significantly rising. Since COVID, every month they're just going up and up. And in addition, if we stay with the liquid route, we would have to replace our sand filter. And our sand filter right now, the projected cost to replace that is like $420,000, which isn't terrible, but the problem is we're gonna have to replace it like 2 or 3 years down the line because one of the chemicals that we have to use is alum. And when alum gets into the sand, it causes it to turn into like a slush jelly material and it clogs up the sand filter lines. And so then you can't get those cleaned and eventually you can't use it, which means we would have to continuously replace the sand filter, which is about 30 years old anyways, and the technology for it is kind of like outdated. So if you go the UV direction, you'll be using a cloth filter, which gets more of the materials out of the water before it flows through the lights. DEQ also suggests that we use the UV. They like that approach. Bill and Ken spoke to their DEQ representative, and he was highly supportive of going the UV route. And like Scott's already mentioned, like half the plants either have UV or they're implementing it now. The cost of this project is going to range between 2.5 to 3.5 million. But before you have a heart attack on that, we had originally set aside like $600,000 for the wastewater treatment plant. And all the items that we had, set aside for, we wouldn't need because we wouldn't be going from gas to liquid. So that $600,000 could go towards this project. In addition, we have about 2.5 million of ARPA money we have not committed yet. Now, I know you guys want to use it on water and sewer infrastructure, but hear me out. It has to be committed by the end of the year, which this project would do, and this project is about 18 to 24 months, so it could be spent within the time frame. and the sewer fund makes money. So what you could do is you could create a set aside like we do in the general fund. You know, you guys say, I want 150,000 every month set aside to pay our bond payment. You could stay the same thing for the sewer fund. I want to set aside a certain amount every month to repay this 2.5 million that you use, that I want to use on infrastructure, so that when you go to actually change out the water and sewer lines, the sewer fund has already saved that money to repay itself for using it for this project. Any questions? This is a better way to go, though. This UV.
What locality has done this close to us?
Oh, which one? I did have a list, but I didn't bring it with me.
Every locality that I've talked to in their areas, Blackstone, Dillon, some of the bigger plants like Lawrenceville, Emporia, they are comparable size to our plants. Our plant is a 2.4 million gallons, those plants there. A lot of the smaller plants, like Dillon's only a 30,000 gallon a day plant, but they do the UV. Because of the dangers and the cost of chlorine, and when you add chlorine, you got to kill chlorine. So you have to add another chemical, which is called sulfur dioxide. So you can't put chlorine back into the Appomattox River. You have to kill it with sulfur dioxide. Well, since COVID, a ton cylinder of sulfur dioxide was $300, cheap. I mean, really it was cheap. Now it's $1,700 a ton. Chlorine used to be $400 or $500 a ton. Now it's up to $1,900 a ton. And
How many gallons are we pumping? I mean, what is our capacity that we're doing a day compared to, say, Dillon?
Oh, our plant is doing an average of about 1.1 million gallons a day right now. It'll be more tomorrow when this rain comes. But
You got to think, in 1994, when that, correct me if I'm wrong, 1994, the
Yes, sir.
plant opened, and it was the most modern plant at that time. Today, it's not the most modern plant. The filtering, the sand filtering has been down for 3 years.
yes, sir.
And we've had to get a waiver from DEQ for that. When we went to clean out the sand filters, the sand, the bottom of it, the alum wasn't always used from the beginning. So
Alum got introduced in 2008 according to the Chesapeake Bay Act. So alum removes the phosphorus. We had phosphorus limits. Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, so the public can hear you.
Back in 2008, we had to comply with the Chesapeake Bay Act, removing of phosphorus and nitrogen. And phosphorus, the cheapest and the easiest way to remove phosphorus was alum sulfate, aluminum sulfate is what the short name is alum. The thing what alum does is it combines around the phosphor molecules or any dirt molecules and encapsulates it, and so it can't be released into the water. So that's why the alum was, the only two chemicals we had to choose from was alum and ferric chloride. You don't want ferric chloride nowhere near your site. I mean, it's a very dangerous chemical. So alum was our safest and most economical chemical we could use to remove phosphorus. The only way to remove phosphorus is a chemical addition to it. You can't burn it off like nitrogen. Nitrogen goes off into the atmosphere, but phosphorus does not. So that's why we had to do alum, and that's when we started having problems. After so many years, alum going into the sand filters, it just makes the sand, like she said, like a jelly or clog up. It's not, these sand filters look like almost like a giant swimming pool sand filter. There's 6 units in there, and when the sand gets that heavy or gummed up, the air is not able to move it so it can clean it, so it can clean the water before we disinfect it and send it back to the river.
But what the alum has also done in that pit is corroded the valves at the bottom. So we would have to, if we go to sand, it's more than just buying the sand like we used to. We're going to have to, we would have to redo the whole. Once we got it out, we realized this, the staff, that we would have to redo all of the valves and everything else, and the boxes. The control panels are obsolete and not working either. So the engineer brought this to our attention, as I said in the beginning, in that this will take us to where we should be in this stage of running our plant and into the future. We'll be talking in probably the next 5 years. Even water plants are looking at using chlorine, but they have to still use chlorine for what's through the system, but they can use UV lighting for the raw water, whereas we do, I'm getting off topic, but we use chlorine at the front of the plant to with the raw water as well, but you can do it differently at the water plant as well. And over time, this is going to be more cost efficient than replacing the sand and the filtering, and of course having the two different types of. We'll have less chemicals that could be a problem for our plant, for employees and the environment.
How long have we been aware of this situation?
I've known about us needing to switch from chlorine when we had the issue. I did not realize about the sand the way it was until we went looking at doing the UV once the engineer was there, and that we're not going to continue, DEQ is not going to continue to let us not have a sand filtering system. So we went to clean out the sand. That's when we found out over the last few months that everything in it at the bottom is corroded.
So this has all come about in the last 6 months? Or is this something that's been accumulating and happening for the last 10 years? I mean,
Well, the filtering, the sand filtering has been down for 2 or 3 years. But the chlorine is just, we wanted to do that because we had the leak. And so that was 2 years ago that we've been trying to get to this point.
And the sand trap, 420,000 roughly to replace?
Yes.
And then 600,000 is what we were gonna spend to go from gas to liquid. Is that accurate, or?
I'm not exactly, I knew you were gonna ask that question, and I could not get like a set amount, because until we like put it out to bid and find out from a
Right.
contractor how much, so I don't really know. I probably would have had to come back to you and say, hey, can I use a little more money for this project? Because it wasn't even in the ARPA listing. It was for the water plant, but not the wastewater treatment plant.
But ballparking, we're talking about $1 million there in that process.
If I had to guess, that's what I would say.
And what would a normal sand filter change? You said a couple of years, 2 to 3? Was that?
Would you say 2 or 3?
Whether it's been down?
No, if you had to change it because of the owl, like when it got clogged up.
I could say, yeah, a couple years, because, I mean, the alum,
the
we have to
alum
feed
wears
more
away.
alum now than we used to because of the, I don't know what's changed, you know, what's coming in with more phosphorus. I don't know if people are, you know, the Longwood, the colleges or whatever, you know, are introducing more phosphorus into our system. So we're having to feed more alum now than we did when we started. And so that problem could be accelerated because of the more feed of alum into the plant.
And does that mean we're gonna have the $400,000 again in 2 years and the $400,000 again in another 2 years?
Yeah, but then you gotta think about inflation. It'll probably be more than that.
I'm just keeping
Yeah.
it at that's
That's still a chunk of money.
The key is it's special. It's not like we can't go up the road to get the sand either.
Right.
This is do you want to explain the sand
The
part of
sand-
it? It's only two places
Only two places in the United States, what we were gonna get came out of Texas. And I can't quote you the diameter of the sand and the side, the sand had to have certain edges on it, almost like a octagon shape. It had to be a certain size, and the sand itself that we was gonna get came out of Texas. Well, just to ship it, the sand here from Texas was $50,000-$60,000 because it was just gonna take 16 tractor trailer loads to bring it here. It's 144 tons of sand in the bottom of that sand filter. And like I said, there's a specialty sand. You can't go down here to the Appomattox River and dig it up and put it in there because it wouldn't work.
Do you have and you may not have it now, do you have a price on what it costs us to treat what we're doing now with the alum and everything else you have to use daily? Can we get a price on that as well?
Yeah, we can get the yearly price of what chemicals and all that are.
That's fine, yeah, I wanna see what that is, because correct me if I'm wrong, that's less chemicals we're gonna have to use, correct?
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah, the only chemicals we'll need if we do this is the caustic soda.
Caustic soda and alum. That's the only two chemicals. We'll get rid of chlorine and SO2 that go directly into the river.
So what's to stop DEQ from coming in if we did replace the sand filter and say, you can't do this anymore, we're all going to this new system?
I don't.
Can't answer.
Yeah, I can't say that they won't. I mean,
No.
but they haven't.
Yeah.
It's preferred, but they haven't set a regulation to say you have to your plan has to comply with moving towards this within the next 10 years. But what they're saying is it's the technology is better and it's preferred because you're putting less chemicals back in the river.
I know we're at
If I can explain the sand filters, how they work. They'll go into the system, and there's two of them, one on each side, and they're rotating disc with cloth on them. And as
That's not the sand filter. You're talking about the cloth filter.
That's the cloth filter. The sand filter works just like your swimming pool. If any of y'all ever seen a swimming pool filter, the pressure lifts the sand up. When you backwash it, it lifts the sand up, cleans it, and the reject water goes out. This right here, the cloth system, is in a big disc. It's round. And as the head pressure goes up, those discs will move to a cleaner cloth. So it's cleaning the water constantly. Now, when the system has gone all the way around to where it's back to a dirty cloth again, it will let you know, these automatic systems, they'll let you know, and it'll automatically backwash itself with high pressure water. And with our wastewater plant, we have like a 98% removal rate of particles. And so the sand filter will get even more. So the sand filters, the cloth filters, I'm sorry, wouldn't have to, they still have to be cleaned periodically, but they clean themselves. And then replacing them, the engineer, one of the sales reps we talked to said, with the all system, you still have to change them out, the cloth, every once in a while, but not as often as the sand.
What's the lifespan of the lights? Roughly.
12 to 14,000 hours, and the banisters, they say they can last up to 15 years, but they recommend you switch them out like 10 to 12 years.
They self-clean themselves as well.
And okay, because at $400,000 every 2 years, it wouldn't take long to make 2.5 million up.
Thus, my question about the 2.5 million, you said you wanted to take it from the infrastructure of the water and sewer to use to help pay for this. ARPA, that you want to take the ARPA money that we designated for water and sewer to pay for this, correct?
I want to use the ARPA funds that have not been committed. I know what you want to use it for, but if you don't have it committed by December, we'll be paying that money back anyways to the government. This way, we're committing it, and we're saying we're doing this project, and we can have the money spent, and then the sewer fund can save the money on the back end, because it makes, like last year, it made $800,000.
I thought we were committed already to that water and sewer.
No, the job has to be committed. Y'all allocated it to use for water and sewer lines. Committed means we have a contract with a contractor obligated to pay them, and it'll be done by 2026.
So we're going to have the money to pay them for the bill at the end of 2026, is that correct?
Who?
The town of Farmville from the ARPA money.
I'm lost.
I'm lost.
Yeah, no, if we don't have any contracts to replace water and sewer lines right now, because we've been waiting for the study to be completed.
Correct.
And then we were going to do the ones that were the oldest and move up.
So in essence, are you saying you want to delay what we're trying to achieve with the water and sewer, with the survey that we're getting the information to where we can replace the water and sewer lines?
I'm saying that when we get that in December, we would still be able to start the set-aside fund now with the water and with the sewer fund, just like we do with the general fund to pay our bonds, is what she's saying, in that we can set that money aside. So every month we would set aside, if you want to do, we need to analyze about how much we bring in a month that we can put the savings, and we can do the max. What we would do is save that, and then when we get an amount that we can pay for a project, we'll do X project. Then we'll save again, do the next set of lines.
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful to know what that timeline would be. For instance, if it's going to take 2 or 3 years to replace that 2.5 or whatever $1 million. I guess maybe what some of us have in mind is, well, we've got a roundabout coming. Is that going to take some new plumbing?
I can tell you that there's $1 million of the sewer fund money that is sitting at VIP that I moved. It's unrestricted, but I moved it over there so it could earn money, and the sewer fund has never needed me to pull that money back. So that's, and it has about $1 million sitting in the cash account. So it has funds, but so you could say, okay, that $1 million at VIP automatically is repaying. I just need to commit with a project, that 2.5, because I don't want to send it back to the federal government.
What's the deadline of us having to spend that money before?
Well, we have to have it spent by 2026, December 2026, but we have to have it committed by December of this year, 2024.
Is there any chance that we will have the study back and have a bid and all of that stuff done by December of this year? I think that's what would answer the question and solve it completely.
They're not even going to get us the study till the first part of December. So, and we would have to pick those lines and get someone to say we can spend $2.5 million. But we already have $1 million, is what she's saying now, that when that comes up, we can pull $1 million out if we wanted to.
And still not delay the project.
Delay what project?
Still not delay the project for the water and sewer.
No.
Exactly. The other part is.
We won't be drawing money on it anymore.
I understand that.
But
yeah, I understand that part. But I understand what you're saying as well, where this money has to be spent by December. No, it has to be committed in a project by December 31st of this year.
And it has to be spent by December of 26.
Exactly. By 2 years after. Okay.
And we're not looking for an answer tonight. This is all, we're giving you information, and then we can talk about it again next week, because TRC has a proposal for us. Their proposal for us to do the engineering for this is,
123,000, I think. I have it over there if you want the exact number. I think it's 123,600 maybe.
so we can bring that next week. If you're willing to vote on it next week, great. If not, we'll just move it down, or we'll squash it all together. But one way or another, we've got to do something with the plan. We can either make it modern and move it into better, or we can go back to what we've got.
I don't see continuously putting bad money after bad money when you're spending $400,000 every time you turn around, because 2 years will go by quick.
It also sounds like it's a question of whether or not you're going to pivot from running out of time to commit the money, or actually committing the money towards something with the knowledge that you kind of have a backup built up for when those future projects may come up on.
Now, also, Julie, you said we have the million set aside, but you also have $400,000 sitting somewhere to do something with, correct?
So I have $1 million at VIP set aside, and then you guys had already set aside 600,000 of ARPA that is not in that 2.5. So it could be, I don't need the whole 2.5, and it could be a little bit left, but either.
So it's kind of like, remember don't quote me on the number of years, 2 or 3 years ago, I came and said, this is the wish list of the water plant and the wastewater plant. The water plant has been steady going after theirs, that you all approved, saying, we can do these projects. And we've been committing them and finishing the project. We've done several projects there. The wastewater plant has been not as speeding their process up. No, this has nothing to do with Ken. Ken's new to the ball game. But where we're at now is we've had, when we went, as I said, when we went to them with what we wanted to do, they said, why are you doing that? This is better. And so that's when we started looking, and then we were going to order the sand, but we had to clean out. And when we did that, Bill and them found, all that's useful is the concrete basin, put it that way. That's about all that's useful there. Which is good, because that's where we don't have to construct a basin for the cloth. We already have that. It's just going to be converted from sand to cloth discs. So the question, I'm sorry. Your question though about the 600 or the 400,000 that is sitting there, it's not committed until we did the project. But we have the 400,000 that's separate from the 2.5 of the water lines. So technically you have 1.4 million.
Plus 6?
No, that was after. We have 1.4 million technically you could use for water lines in the sewer fund.
And whatever we save on chemicals.
The 1.4 is not ARPA money, though. That's our money, correct?
Yes.
The 400 is, 1 million's in the bank. Excuse me.
Let me be clear. I'm not against this. I'm trying to see, I want to make sure that the water and sewer does not disappear or fall off to the wayside. I have no problems with updating this wastewater plant whatsoever, none. But I want to make sure that we're not going to neglect the water and sewer project.
The water and sewer line projects. And I would tell you, I'm wholeheartedly for that, because we would have less problems down the road than we do now on water leaks.
Well, my
supposed to, but all of that is going to be, that's not going to be a quick, that's going to be a lot of time that's not going to be done overnight.
Okay, my looking down the road, as far as when the roundabout is done, We had talked about the fact that that would be the time in which we would like to try to upgrade the water and sewer through that specific area while that construction was going on. Are we going to have the money to do that with when that comes about?
Well, I also thought that that was going to be happening sooner originally, but now that project doesn't even start construction until spring of 26 or 27. So in order for us to even try to do a cooperative agreement with whomever VDOT has that will have to move some lines, and they only, in this construction of the roundabout, they're only do anything that they have to move for the construction part. The idea was that we would piggyback off of that after they've done their part on each end. Sometimes you can get a better price because the contractor's already there, all those things. But we're still 3 years away from that.
3 years from now, when we're away from that, when we're at that point, will we have the money necessary to be able to continue that thought process in the future for water and sewer? That's what I'm asking.
If this council tells us to set aside X amount of money in a restricted fund for that purpose out of the sewer, we have to, unless you change that determination.
The issue being, like, because that project's so far out, we cannot commit ARPA funds to it because we don't have a project lined up.
The ARPA funds are going to run out before the project gets started. I follow it completely. I'm just making sure this does not disappear again for the millionth time.
So we'll have the harder numbers next week, correct?
We won't have, unless we sign the contract for them to do the engineering study, we won't have any real hard numbers. The 2.5 to 3.5 is a guesstimate in just conversation. But we've got to actually have them do the engineering work for us to know the price.
No, I was speaking of the amount of money we can pay back.
Yes, we can have that for you next week.
That's what I was speaking of. I know you're not going to have that unless we decide to commit first. But I was speaking of the amount of money that we can grab some teeth on to say we're going to set it aside to make sure within that 3 years, what Mr. Parrott is talking about, the money's going to be in the fund to do the other project that we need to do.
Yeah, in other words, how much do we actually have in reserves to do? Yes, we can calculate that.
Or how much
But
you
what
could-
she's saying right now is we already have $1 million. It's
Totally understand.
unrestricted right now.
Yes.
So you can say you want to restrict it for this, and that $1 million stays at $1 million for water and sewer line replacement. That's my point. You can always restrict funds, and then it can't be unless you change that restriction. It can't be used for anything else.
Do you have enough ARPA money to be able to do what you want to do at the wastewater plant without using the $1 million? That's bottom line.
We have,
We-
we have 2.5.
Well, we have 2.5, and then the 600,000 that was committed to wastewater that we can put towards that as well, because everything that they wanted went from gas to liquid. So we will have 3.1 million. So I'm comfortable in saying that I feel like we should not have to go into that $1 million.
That's
That's what I'm
collecting
asking.
interest all the time as well.
Do what?
The whole 3.1 that is collecting interest
Yes.
all the time. So
Yes.
The only issue is if it comes to the high side of 3.5, then we've got to come up with $400,000.
Yes.
But we're also going to tell you where we can continue, what that money is that we could put aside in a set aside as well.
So next week, you might have a projected dollar amount that could be saved, say either monthly or annually toward replacing that 2.5 million.
Yes.
Okay.
I think when that study comes in December, you have a chance to double down and say, all right, this is important. Do we want to restrict some funds for it or not? As well. Any more questions on that?
Last question, please. Hi. With the, can you give us some numbers about cost of operation with the current system and what we would potentially be saving or spending more of with the new system if we went with that?
I can get you the chemical cost. I don't really know if I would be able to give you the savings, except for we can probably pull out the chemicals we would not be purchasing, and I could tell you that. Besides that, I don't know how much more I could give you on it.
Well, how
Yeah, I
about,
don't think without the study and then
Yeah,
unless we know, unless we know the building of what we need UV light wise and the disc cloths, I don't know how we would know what the operation cost would be until it's engineered.
then can I have the number then? Thank you very much. I just want to say I support the UV light because I know the science works behind it. It doesn't eliminate the need for all chemicals, but it does reduce the footprint of them significantly. So.
yes.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Next item on the agenda is update of the lead pipe survey. Mr. Davis.
Ms. Moore sat down too soon because she's also leading this project, and that is, as I've shared with you before, there's a requirement by the federal government that by October the 16th, I think is the date, that all localities have to have a survey done of all their pipes to state that they are not lead or galvanized, lead or copper piping.
Yeah.
So without any real good data other than doing by plan, looking at each year of when they were done plan-wise, let's just say it's not able to be done internally to meet the deadline. So Julie's going to give you a synopsis of a company that is able to do this in the time frame, and many localities as well have, since we went this route, we understand did not do it themselves. So you can explain it.
I thought originally this might have been kind of like a structurally designed to, give you this added footprint, but maybe he's just offloading onto you.
Okay, so I have to give Kim Thompson in my office a lot of kudos because we searched high and low to find a consulting firm that could help us with this project, because we have about 3,000 meters, which means that you have 3,000 connections that you have to list on this survey. And so we got one proposal and it was absolutely ridiculous. And so we kept looking. And so TRC, we met with Greg Smith with them like twice now, and we've set in on a webinar. And basically, what they're going to do is they're going to take all of the plan documents that we have, all the paper files we have, and they're going to bring engineers, and they're going to sit down here for weeks at a time, go through those, and list out every line that they can find on those plans. Because on this survey, you have to list the address, the size of the line, not only, to the main connection, but to the house too. And then there's like all these other questions you have to answer out too. So it's very time consuming, and you have to do that for over 3,000 like addresses. So they're going to take these plans and they're going to put it into this survey. And the ones that they can't find, they're going to list as unknown, which you can do. You can list unknown because this survey is kind of like a living document. So you submit it, they've agreed to submit this document for us, and then they're going to answer any questions that come from the EPA, which they have already guaranteed me we will get. And then you have the October 2026 2026 or 2027, sorry, to update the unknowns. So it's kind of going to be like a phase project. The first phase, when next week you'll get the proposal from us, it's like a task A and a B. And for them to just take everything we have, put it in there, submit it, and answer the questions from the EPA, that's $112,500. And then from there, whatever we don't know, that's where they're going to have to start investigating. If they have, and so there's a task 3 listed on the proposal you'll get, and it gives you a scenario. If say there's 100 meters that they don't know and they have to dig, that's going to be like $70,000 just for 100 meters. And so it's going to be, I think the way they want to approach it is if it's a street and most of the houses were built around the same time, they can sample so they don't have to, dig up every like connection on that street. And so I think they're going to approach it that way and some other creative ways. I think one of the things that has been tossed out is surveys, asking like, homeowners, can you provide us like when your house was built, like the line, can you take a picture of it and things of that sort, which we've heard you don't get a real good turnout on that, but it is an option that we can do. So we're asking for you guys next week to sign the proposal so that spending the $112,500 to get this survey done because it has to be done.
So if we don't have it done, completed, and turned in to the federal government by the 16th, then they fine each locality per month.
Or is it per day? It wouldn't surprise me if it's not per day.
And it's all about lead.
I don't see where we got an option. I mean, it's either sink or swim.
And this option was much better. The first one, the proposal we got, it was like $430,000 to do this.
Well, we're not through with this either.
We're not.
This is just the tip of the iceberg, I'm afraid.
But we're hoping that
the
when
good part, though, I think, is if you look at the majority of the town and when it was annexed, was pretty sure that there was not lead at that point in time in copper piping. It's a certain area that we got to make sure that had already been replaced.
Any additional questions on lead pipe survey? Not hearing any. Yeah, it doesn't sound like we got too much of a choice. Thank you, Ms. Moore. Next item on the agenda is update on the new restaurant site plan. Mr. Davis?
This is just for informational purposes. You have it in front of you. This is a proposed restaurant that will be going where Ken's Car Coop was. The Planning Commission at their last meeting approved the site plan. Staff is still working on the final with any comments for erosion sediment control or anything like that. But it does, and Ashley's here to answer any questions you may have, but it does meet all of the zoning requirements as far as stacking for the pickup window, the number of parking spaces, all those things, vegetation that is needed. The entrance, you'll notice, is not from Main Street, it's from Bowling Lane. And they will be replacing where they will be putting in curb and in sidewalks on Main Street. And no, I don't know who the restaurant is definitively.
I got a couple questions. That type's so small, I really can't read it. But beyond that, is the existing paved area from Carcoop, is this greater than that, or is that pretty much the,
That's pretty much the site.
okay? And everything will be takeout?
No, they'll have inside seating,
I'm sorry?
inside seating, and a patio area with some seating, and then a pickup window.
If you're looking at the drawing, Main Street is on your left-hand side, northwest. Yes, that'll be the front of the building. They'll enter from Bowling Lane.
How much more lighting will be out there?
Lighting?
Lighting. We don't
Whatever.
have lighting in our ordinance, so we don't review the lighting. I believe they did have a lighting plan in the package, and it does look like more.
Thank you.
How many parking places are projected? I can't really tell on that map.
So according to code, it's 20 required spaces. They have proposed 26 spaces.
And I can email you all this, but this is just to share with you all just for informational purposes, to share where it's going and what the schematic looks like.
Right, and just for the public, I see that the Herald did some engagement farming and asked what people would like it to be, but that's not really what this is. We're not hand selecting somebody to move here. Somebody has chosen this site.
Correct.
Correct.
This is a national chain. We know that much. We don't know definitively what it is.
Yeah.
The Wendy's down the street, across the street from this, sometimes has, during lunch hour, cars that come out actually into the turn lane when they're waiting for their fresh and delicious burgers. Is this a popular restaurant? Do you think they might need more than 5 spaces in their takeout lane? And where is the additional?
If they do, they will be coming from the back of the parking lot, so it won't be in the roadway. So if you notice, the cars are heading, are going towards Main Street. They're going towards Main Street. So they would have to enter, so they'd be wrapping around the back of the parking lot to get to the drive-through.
They also have that pull-through. There's a second lane beside the stacking, so they're required to have 7 stacking spaces, and they have 7 supplied.
Awesome.
Any other additional questions about the site plan at this time? Thank you. Ms. Austin? Next up, yes, that's right. Next up is discussion on proposed ordinance number 234, fences, which also visited the Planning Commission and passed through. Ms. Austin, you have an update for us on the fences?
It was approved by Planning Commission. It's before Town Council. Planning Commission had made one correction, and that's going to be to letter B, to add travel between pedestrian and visibility. So it reads, fences shall not impair vehicular or pedestrian travel visibility. That was the only change made at Planning Commission.
You're referencing 5B, is that accurate?
Correct.
Yeah.
And the 5 foot was, say that one more time, please. What's the 5 foot for?
The travel, to add travel. There's
Any additional questions regarding the proposed fence ordinance? We'll have a public hearing next meeting on this.
Yeah, I've had some feedback from some folks and I, you know, and the feel is a little bit of overreach. You know, I'd kind of like to see it kept at a minimum as just the very first, and this is what's been said to me, keep it at the very minimum where it does not impede traffic, it does of pedestrians or anything like that, but putting limits on people's fence heights and the way the finish of it has to be and things like that is getting a little bit restrictive on people's property, and would like to see a bare minimum on this. We can always add to it if we had to later. We're fixing a problem, obviously, and don't need to go into all of that or where the problem was. So let's fix that problem and that problem alone. Why do we need to add a whole lot more that could just generate even more problems in the future?
I'm going to piggyback on John. I think we should just leave it at 5A and B and get rid of C and D. I don't want the height restriction at all. I don't want any height restriction on it. I just want it to be that it doesn't impair vehicular or pedestrian travel visibility.
Then they could build a
They
high
could
fence
buy
in
a
the front
10-foot
yard.
fence in front of their house.
Well, let them do it. I think government's getting involved in people's rights, and that's my feeling. So I don't want to impede on people's rights on what they want to do on their own property. That's my opinion.
Any additional discussion at this time?
Yeah, I think the planning commission has gone through this and took their time to send it to us. And I don't think they just willy-nilly did it. And this problem, when it started, one of the problems were the heights of the fence, to be honest with you. I think we need to leave it like it is and go off their recommendation.
Any additional discussion at this time? We'll have a chance for a public hearing next meeting, and then the potential to vote on or not vote on this ordinance at that time. Any additional questions for Ms. Austin? Not hearing any. All right, thank you. Next up is discussion on proposed ordinance number 235, business licenses. Mr. Davis, looks like a lot of it was cleaned up language, moving from treasurer to finance director, and then a little bit extra in there. Do you have an update for us on that?
This is, I call it housekeeping. It is where our current code and the state code, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Elder or Ms. Moore, it came about when we were having some people not paying their business licenses or meals tax and those types of things. And so it just to clean up what the current state code and then from what our code was. If you notice, majority of it's the same except for a few items, just to so that we're not conflicting. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
Any questions or discussion about the cleanup of the language around ordinance number 235, business licenses? Not hearing any. All right. Town manager's report, Mr. Davis, what do you got for us?
I think the biggest thing for tonight is just to give you a little bit about weather. The last call that I was on today was that the worst is anticipated late afternoon, early evening tomorrow to Friday morning. We're in the area of 4 to 6 inches, so we can expect some flash flooding possibly. anytime with that in the front that's coming from the north is a potential for tornadoes to pop up potentially. The river's currently at 5 feet, approximately 5 feet right now. It's projected to crest at almost 16 feet by Friday evening, which is almost 16 feet. It's not really a problem per se until we hit 19 to 20 feet where it crosses the road or begins to get into any other structures. Just to remind you, the last major one, it's the ranked fourth for Farmville, was in 2020, November of 2020. It was at 23 feet. And that's the fourth highest on record for us. So, yeah, we get concerned when it hits the 19, 20 mark, but at 16 feet, we should be, from that standpoint, we should be good. So hopefully it's not high winds. We don't have but so many trees, but we'll probably have another call tomorrow. And I've been forwarding you emails to give you the most updated information that I have from VDM or the Weather Service. So, and we'll be prepared as best as we can.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Mr. Hardy, any additional comments at this time?
No, sir.
Mr. Hunter?
I just have one item. One of my constituents who is an actress now, Miss Robin Allen has a movie she's starring in August the 10th on Lifetime, and I just asked everybody to look at it if they get a chance. We'll go into more detail once we can get some more information on, but I do have the pics here. If anybody wants to see them, I'll pass them around. That's it.
Mr. Yellen?
Just one thing, I want to keep the spotlight, if I may, on the troubles with the microphone that we were having. Please, let's see if we can get that. People are missing out. We don't want that. Thank you.
Mr. Parrott?
I'm good.
Mr. Dwyer?
Just an observation, I think that we had issues maybe over the last year or so of kind of pop-up yard sales out on West 3rd Street. The spot that was problematic, last week it moved across the street. I just want to make sure that that is legal. Or I would, as I drive by and see it, I just, looks like it's outside of another business and just concerning.
Mr. Reed?
I'm good.
Ms. Amos?
Good.
I don't have anything other than to stay safe. Next 24 hours to 48 hours, heaviest amount of rainfall. So make your plans. And if you come across a flooded roadway, try not to gun it across. Outside of that, Chief, I'm sure your team will be out there patrolling and making sure everybody's behaving themselves, and we appreciate that. Next up, we have a closed session. Shouldn't be any action coming out of that closed session. I'd ask Mr. Yon if he wouldn't mind reading us in.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the Farmville Town Council convene in closed meeting pursuant to Code of Virginia in accordance with the provisions of paragraph 8.7 of section 2.2-3711 for the consultation of legal counsel and briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual and probable litigation, where such consultation or briefing in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body.
Second.
Motion and second. Ms. McKay, can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Yolen?
Yes.
Mr. Hunter?
Yes.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes.
All right, we're going to close session, be out shortly. Thank you. Mr. Yolen, if you wouldn't mind reading this out, sir.
Whereas the town of Farmville Town Council has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the Farmville Town Council that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Farmville Town Council hereby certifies that, to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the Farmville Town Council.
Second.
Motion and second. Ms. McKay, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Yolen?
Yes.
Mr. Hunter?
Yes.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes.
Mrs. Amos?
Yes.
Thank you. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn if we have no other business before us.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Ayes have it. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.